Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm so excited for you to learn how to create a triangle shawl. Now, if you've done a triangle shawl before, that's totally fine. This is a great pattern. You can even adjust it to different weights of yarn if you're experienced at doing so, and it's a fun, easy repeat, especially one for on the go. Once you get this pattern down, it's really easy to remember. If you're a beginner crocheter, a triangle shawl is exactly where you should be starting. I think it's one of the easiest shawl shapes to make, and it's a lot of fun. For this shawl, I chose to work with the We Crochet palette. This is a fingering weight yarn. This one is 231 yards for 50 grams, and then it is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. I have all the yardage requirements and everything in the description or within this pattern. I use the color cream and then blush and tea rose, and then Victorian. But you can really do any color grade you want. You can even do it in one solid color. And like I said, you can always go up a hook size, go up a yarn size, and adjust it for how you like. The nice thing about triangle shawls is you can just keep doing the repeat until it's the size you want. For this pattern, I used a 3mm crochet hook. You'll also want scissors for cutting those ends. Some stitch markers I think are absolutely critical if you're the first time doing this type of shawl. That way you know where you're supposed to be increasing and it's easier to keep track of the ends of the shawl. And then of course a tapestry needle to weave in those ends when you're finished. I also recommend a blocking mat because this one is blocked and it really opens up these eyelets and makes it like crisp and clean. It's almost like ironing your clothes. So blocking mat and pins is really nice to have when you're making shawls. It's worth investing in. Otherwise you can use other items. You can lay it out on your bed on a towel and kind of pin it into place. That can work as well. But for aggressive blocks, I do find the pins and the mats the best to use. Now for the pattern today, I'm going to be creating a small sample and then directing on how to do these repeats. So I will be using a different weight of yarn so that you can see these stitches a bit easier. So let's get started. So for the sample on camera, I'm going to be using a 4-weight cotton yarn. It'll be easier for us to see, and you can also see how this can be easily adjusted to different sizes. And I'm going to roll with a 5mm hook. We'll get started by creating a magic circle. And I always like to do just a quick first slip stitch in my magic circle. I find it's just easier to get started that way. And then we're going to be doing a stack single crochet for our first stitch. Now a stack single crochet can always be substituted with a chain 2 in this pattern. But if you've never done a stack single crochet, check this out because the edges are so crisp and so nice by doing it this way. So a stack single crochet is what we're going to do that's going to be substituting for like our first double crochet stitch. So we'll insert into the magic circle, yarn over and bring up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. So we did a single crochet, but we're not done. We're going to go back into this left bar here. We're going to insert our hook into that left bar, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both, and that completes the stacked single crochet. I highly recommend, especially when doing this stack single crochet for the first time, to go ahead and grab a stitch marker and mark that first stitch because sometimes it can be easy to work into the side of the stitch and you don't want to do that. So mark that first stitch. Then we're going to double crochet 2 stitches. And then next we are going to chain 2 and double crochet 2. And then next we are going to be repeating this next segment 3 times. So we're going to chain 2 and double crochet 3, and we'll do that for 3 times. So I'm going to chain 2, double crochet 3. Chain 2 and double crochet 3. And now we are ready to keep on working this shawl. So that's the end of our very first row, and we have 12 stitches and we're ready to turn. Now what we can do is we can take our magic ring and we can close this. We're not working in the round, but it's a great way to start the top of the shawl. And it's okay if you have an eyelet here because it's going to continue to match the eyelets that move down the center of the shawl. So go ahead and we're going to turn our work and we're going to start the next row. Now for row 2, I've turned and I have this marked as the wrong side, but to be honest, for the shawl, there's not really a right side, wrong side. It pretty much looks the same from either way. For row 2, we're going to start our first stitch as a stacked single crochet, and this is where we'll really get familiar with this stitch. We don't start with any chains. We're going to work right into our very first stitch by inserting our hook, yarning over and pulling up a loop, yarning over and pulling through both of the loops on the hook, then go back into this left bar over here, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both of the loops on the hook. And this is where another stitch marker really comes in handy because especially working those stacked single crochets, it is nice to mark the first stitch of each row. Then what we will do is we'll double crochet into the next 2 stitches. And then we are going to chain 2. We're going to double crochet 1 into the previous chain space. And now we're going to double crochet in each stitch until we get to the next chain 2 space. So we'll simply double crochet 3. And this row will work as our repeat for quite some time. It works out quite nicely. So I've double crocheted in each stitch until I get to my next chain 2 space. This is kind of like our center of the shawl. This is where that point will really start to form. So in this chain space, we're going to want to do 2 double crochets. So we're going to double crochet 2. And then we're going to chain 2 and then double crochet 2 more all into that space. And now we're going to double crochet into the next chain space. So once we get to that next chain space, what we'll do is we will do 1 double crochet into this chain space. And now we're going to chain 2 and double crochet into the last 3 stitches. I'll move that stitch marker. And that is the end of row 2, and we can go ahead and turn. This is increased to be 18 stitches. For each row, we're going to be increasing now by 6 stitches. So let's turn and go to row 3. Now row 3 through 6 are just a repeat of row 2. I'm going to work it one more time on camera. And I want to note right now, this kind of looks like a heart. That's just kind of the nature of doing all of these into the magic ring. When you go to block this out, it'll block quite nicely. You can bring it up and notice it's starting to go into that triangle. So for row 3 is a repeat of row 2. We're going to do the first stitch as a stacked single crochet. And then mark that stitch. And then we will double crochet into the next 2 stitches. So we're double crocheting until the next chain 1 space or chain 2 space. And now we're going to double crochet. And now we're going to chain 2 and then double crochet 1 into the chain space. And now we will double crochet until the next chain 2 space. And now that we've gotten to this chain 2 space, we are going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, all into this chain space. Just double crocheting 2, chain 2, and double crocheting 2 more. The one thing to look out for when you're putting a lot of stitches is, especially if you're working a finer yarn, this stitch right here might get lost. Like these stitches might kind of go over it a bit and you might not see it. You do not want to miss this stitch here. So make sure you're getting right into that next stitch. And then we are going to double crochet until the next chain 2 space. And now we're going to double crochet 1 into that chain space, chain 2, and then double crochet into the last 3 stitches. And that is the end of row 3. I'm going to go ahead and do rows 4 through 6 off camera, and I will come back for row 7. So now we are ready for row 7. And for row 7, we're going to start the same way we have before, where we will do a stacked single crochet. And then we will double crochet into the next 2 stitches. And then we're going to chain 2 and do 1 double crochet into that chain 2 space. Now we're going to do a little bit different on this row to add a little bit of dimension to this. So I'm going to chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet. And I'm going to repeat that until I get to this next chain 2 space. So that's chain 1, skip 1, double crochet into the next. Now that I've reached that chain 2 space, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing before inside of it. So we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 double crochet stitches. And now to work to the next chain 2 space, we're going to start by doing a double crochet. And then we're going to do that again where we do chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. So that's chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet. And we're going to do that until we get to the next chain 2 space. Now as we get to this next chain 2 space, we'll be chaining 1, skipping 1, and then we're going to double crochet 1 into that chain 2 space. Then we will chain 2 and then double crochet into the last 3 stitches. So this completes rows 1 through 7, and our repeats are rows 2 through 7. So rows 2 through 7 are the repeats for the remaining of the shawl. So you already know everything to do this. It's really quite beginner simple shawl, but it's fun to do. When you're creating triangle shawls, most commonly we need to do 6 increases to keep that triangle shape. And so if you want to use a different stitch pattern, you can design your own. Just remember to, you can always start this way. I love this edge. It looks like a garter knit edge. Increase 1 here and then increase by 4 in the center. And then you can do whatever you want to do in between if you want to design your own. Now notice for the pink shawl, we have our first increase. It's not quite as long and as big as this because this is a different yarn weight. But I've done the sections, so I repeated 2 through 7 2 more times in this color, and then I switched colors, and I did 3 sections for each color. That's all I did, is just changing the yarn. It makes it look really, really pretty. I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well as my blog, and come back soon for some more fun projects.